and he's sort of swearing on the tee about some blankety blank fish that jumped when he was trying to hit his shot. And as they're walking off the tee, there was a great picture in Sports Illustrated. I actually have a copy of it, of my dad backing out as Tommy Bolton is reared back, getting ready to throw this club into the lake. And you see my father backing out of the frame, and then he throws the club into the lake. But the interesting story about that was, from what I was told, there was a little kid. There was to the right of the 18th fairway. There's houses there now. There was nothing there in those days. Who jumped over, went in the lake, and got the driver. And he came out and he's got the driver, and Bolt's now walked around the fairway. And the Bolt all of a sudden sends the marshal, "Go back and get my driver." And the fans are hollering at him, "No, you didn't want it. The little kid's got it." They lifted him up over this fence, and he was gone with Tommy Bolt's driver. I said to Dad, I said, "What would happen if Tom had reared back and hit you?" He goes, "Well, I still had my driver."
What do you love the most about Augusta and the Masters?
Well, first of all, it's always at the same course. It's very easy to understand the course. We've all watched it for so many years on television. So we know all the holes. We know everything that's happened there. It is a beautiful place. For any of you who are listening to this that have never been there, if you ever have the chance to go to a Masters, please do. It'll be interesting when we go in November, to get a little off the subject, because the flowers probably won't be there. Because it's not that time of year. It's in the fall. But Augusta has always been special because it's the best run golf tournament in the world. I'm not putting down any of the other sponsors that run great tournaments, but this place is run perfectly. There is nothing that isn't thought of, that isn't taken care of. There isn't a stone that's unturned that something needs to be done. If there's ever anything that's done and someone doesn't like it, it's never done again. The galleries are the most controlled patrons, as they call them there, the most controlled of anywhere. You would never hear anybody hollering mashed potatoes or "you the man," because if they did, they'd be gone.
And they'd never come back.
And every ticket has a number on it, and every number goes to a person's name, so they know who owns the tickets. And if you were to be one of those idiots that did something like that, no, you're gone. You're never coming back to this golf tournament again.
What's your favorite hole at Augusta?
Oh my gosh!
I mean, you've played there a bunch of times.
There's so many of them. I think when you play there, when you have an opportunity to play there like I have, and I got to get you and I down there to play. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that invite, but it hasn't come yet.
Well, it's coming. Don't worry about it. Because when you're at the tournament, you never get to walk across to the 12th green or the 13th tee. You're stopped to the right of 11. Right behind 12T and then down 13 fairways. So when you play there, it's fun to hit the ball on the green at 12 and get to walk across the two bridges and stand back on the tee and look back and say, yeah. I remember when my brother Billy and I were there this year, I was looking back waving, and my brother Bill goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm waving at all the gallery back there because I never get to come back here." I love that little hole.
I've only been around, I've walked around the golf course once. I think it was a couple of years ago with Jimmy Walker. It's amazing how much smaller some of the greens are than they look on TV.
Oh, yeah. And TV doesn't do it justice. Number one, it's a very hilly golf course. And no one realizes that till they go there. The greens, the slopes in the green are gigantic. I mean, they're really severe. And, to the point now with the grasses that they have, they're like 13 or 14 on the step meter. I mean, they are brutal. When the course was built, 7 or 8 would be a fast green because it was old Bermuda grass. It was grainy. So the greens are not that big. And the areas that you have to shoot at are very small because very seldom do you hit a ball into a green where you aim at the pin. You aim at a slope that takes the ball down to the pin because of the sloping. I mean, the famous Sunday pin placement on 16, you've seen it so many times. The guys hit it long and to the right, and it comes up the hill and goes down. That's why there's so many hole-in-ones that are made there. Boy, you can tell when a hole-in-one's made. The roars come up from all over there. And so, I think it's a place that you don't see many first-time winners. What was the last one? Maybe Fuzzy Zeller, I think, might have been the last.
I don't know. Danny Willett.
Danny Willett. Yeah, Danny Willett.
A lot.
And I think he'd been there more than once, though. Anyway, you don't see that very often because there's so much local knowledge involved in it, so much of the greens. A lot of the guys, when they go beforehand, a couple weeks before the tournament, will get a local caddy to go with them and talk about the nuances of the greens because they're different. There's putts that just don't break the same way. You can remember in '86 when Jack Hole that great putt on 17 for birdie, he and his son were talking about, I think it's going to go to the right. And Jack says, no, I remember this straightens out at the end. And he made the putt and won the Masters, one of the greatest Masters ever, the '86 Masters. And there's what I'm talking about, local knowledge. Putts that look like they're going to go one way and they go the other. Now they're constantly redoing the greens and changing them, flattening out some areas. The last couple of years, the one I think is the most notable is the fifth hole, where the back left portion, they leveled out a pin placement that was never there before. So you've got to practice those and know those. You pretty much know where the pins are going to be for 4 days because they pretty much use the same areas. So you have the ability to practice those putts and putt to them. I can remember hearing Mark O'Mara say that the putt he made on the 72nd hole to win, he had practiced that in a practice round, so he knew the break of it. So there's so many little nuances there. The greens are tiny, and they're even smaller than their actual size of them because you very seldom get to shoot it the middle of the green. You shoot it in an area that takes the pin one way or takes the ball one way or another down to the pin.
Why do you think there have been certain guys, obviously they were great players, Jack, Tiger, but you've had guys that have won there a couple of times. Jose's won there a couple of times. Bernhard's won there a couple of times. Why is it you think that we see repeat champions there? Is it that local knowledge? Because all of those players have such different types of games. I mean, Nicklaus faded the golf ball. Tiger could draw it. I mean, it's an interesting place.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, it's like I said, it's a lot of the local knowledge. It's also the first major of the year. There's a tremendous amount of pressure, Claude, on these players when they play at Augusta. I think, in all honesty, if you would ask any tour player in the world, if there was only one major, which one would you want to win? And they'd probably say Augusta, because that fraternity of getting in that little locker room upstairs in the clubhouse where only the champions and former champions have a chance to go to, I think is a special place. And everyone really wants it. I mean, I think that my players that have played well there and those that haven't are more amped up when they go to the first tee than any other championship I think I've ever seen them at. I mean, I wouldn't say they're nervous. I would say it's anxiety. They just want to get going. The problem at Augusta, and you know this because you and I have had the opportunity to coach numerous players at Augusta, is a lot of times the guys get there too early. They come in on Sunday night and they play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Well, by Tuesday, they're ready to go. They're ready to go. So I really caution my guys, why don't you come in Monday night, Tuesday morning, and play 9 holes one day, 9 holes the other. This is for guys that go weeks in advance to prepare themselves for the course. I said, that way you're not so amped up and you're away from, you got the par 3 tournament on Wednesday. Most of the guys like to play in it. Some of them don't. Some of them don't want to play in it, so they say it's too much hoopla and stuff. Some of them like the relaxing thing, but I think sometimes you get there so early that you're worn out by the time Thursday comes.
Yeah, and obviously with Phil, who's won there multiple times, has his kind of philosophy on how many putts you have to hit. And I think that can kind of work if your Phil and your brain works like that, but not everybody's brain can work like that.
No, I agree. I mean,
you can over-prepare.
Phil's a different cat. Phil really prepares maybe as much as anybody that's ever played golf. He and Dave Pell's a gentleman that he uses for statistics all the time. They'll go and Dave has some great charts of greens and stuff, percentages of times you make a putt from this area, that area, so on and so forth. Phil likes all that stuff. Now, if you ask DJ about all that, he wouldn't know what you're talking about. He wouldn't want any part of it. If you asked me about it, I wouldn't know what the heck you're talking about.
If you think about it, it's kind of the perfect golf course for the way Phil kind of thinks about golf and plays golf and the way he buys into kind of his theories on everything. It's the perfect place for him.
And he's won 3 times.
Yeah. So, it works.
And everybody says you have to draw the ball there to take advantage of the holes. That isn't necessarily true because faders have won there. But for lefties who have won there, Bubba and Phil's won 3, Bubba's won 2. The fades off the tees like at 13 and 10 and holes like that where it really helps you to turn the ball from right to left, it's played right into their wheelhouse.
Jose's won there numerous times. When you look about his game, what about Augusta suits his game?
Well, Ollie's got such a wonderful wedge game and short game. You know, the fairways are very, the downside to Olazabal and Ballesteros' golf game, if you wanted to look at a downside, because they were two of the greatest players ever, both in the Hall of Fame, they didn't drive the ball as well as some of the guys. But Augusta's got some room to drive the ball. There wasn't that area, we would call it rough, they call it first cut. There wasn't always that area there, so the fairways were always pretty wide, so they could go ahead and turn it loose and let it go. And then a short game that Olazabal has is as good as anybody in the world. And it's difficult to pitch around there. As you well know, there's a lot of slopes and runoff areas on these greens, and those areas are mowed so tightly, it's almost like a green when you're pitching off of it. The problem is because of the slope, you're pitching up the hill, and you're always pitching into the slope. And if you don't know how to shallow out your wedge that you're using to pitch and use the bounce instead of the leading edge, you really struggle. And Seve and Jose Maria were two of the best that ever lived at doing that.
How special was it for you last year to get to see Tiger, win there again? I mean, when I was standing right by the scoring area where he walked in, and Ricky was there and all the guys were there, and I mean, I was crying. And I'm not that close with Tiger, but I mean, I was there in '97 when he won the first one when you were there, and it must have been amazing to watch, because we never thought we'd see that again.
No, and I was doing the TV for Sky, so I was on the call when he won. When he played the last few holes, I was doing the commentary for it, and which was a great honor for me. I loved every minute of it to have that opportunity to do that. A couple things where this was concerned. In talking to Tiger last year at the U.S. Open at Pebble, we were talking about the surgery he had and what he can do, what he can't do. And he said, Richie, the last surgery I had nothing to do with golf. It was all about a quality of life. He says, because I didn't have one. I couldn't play with my kids. I had a hard time getting out of bed. Obviously, I couldn't play golf. And he said, this last surgery was really to give me a quality of life and allow me to spend more quality time with my kids. And he said, and all of a sudden, I could swing again. And he said that part got my juices going, because you know how competitive I am. He said, I couldn't practice near as much as I would like to, and you know how hard he used to work.
Yeah,
he said, but I just figured out how to play again. And he says, when I figured that out, all of a sudden, I win the Tour Championship. Wow, heat of the battle, I'm delivering. And he comes to Augusta. I think the strange thing about last year's Masters, Claude, is that I think Tiger, if I remember right, was one behind starting the back nine, and he only shot one under on the back, and he won. Because why? Because four guys in a row cratered on the 12th hole. They couldn't hit an 8 or 9 iron on the green. It's one of the greatest golf holes in the world is the 12th hole at Augusta, and it's 150 yards long.
There's a great picture of Tiger. I found it on social media, and I was showing it when we were flying home to Brooks's caddy, Ricky Elliott. It's like halfway through the follow through. You can see where Tiger's ball's starting on 12. And it's almost starting left of the green. Whereas everybody else, I think tried, Brooks said, listen, we kind of had a good number and the wind hit it. And Ricky Elliott said to him on the plane home, he goes, yeah, but you started it kind of at the left corner of the bunker, and Tiger's starting it left of the green. Yeah. And that's a mistake that you just can't make.
Well, what you do is you hit it over the middle of the bunker is where you want it to finish. That's your finish line. Now, that's the narrowest part of the green, too, because it's a skinny green that runs away from you to the right. I think where people get fooled to that back right pin is because caught of the angle of the green, the way it sets in there, a left pin and a back right pin is almost 15, 16 yards difference in distance because of the way the green sits. Then you take in the wind that swirls around down there. It kind of comes down 13, around 12 and 11. If you watch the old timers, they will look over their shoulder to the left and they'll look at the flag on the 11th green, because that gives them the true way of looking at it, because the flag up by the green may be blowing one way, but when you look at the way the old timers explained it to me, and I heard my dad and Ben Hogan talk about this way back in the 50s, is that particular wind there when the ball gets above the trees, that's the wind that they actually look at that helps. And I think guys get fooled by looking at the flag on the green. And then if you shoot at the flag, and I mean, in last year, 4 of them in a row, right in front of Tiger Woods. I mean, he's on the 11th hole watching the first two, and then he gets to see the others. they're dumping it in the water. Now, in Brooks's case, I don't think he hit that bad a shot, but it hit on the bank. And there's only one ball ever stayed on the bank, and that's Freddie's.
Freddie, how they stay up there.
And he won the tournament. I mean, that's what you have to do to get luck. But that is one of the great, not just one of the best par threes in the world, that is one of the most exciting holes in the world to play in competition, because anything can happen. You can see a guy take an 8-iron and hit the most beautiful shot, and it carries over the green into the back bunker. So you're watching that, and the guy takes a 9-iron. He doesn't even get it past halfway past the middle of the lake, and he hits it good because the wind is moving around down there. And this is where, the more you've played there, the more you talk to the local caddies that work there all the time, you get huge information, and you have to keep that in your memory bank, because you're going to come there, and in the heat of the battle, when you have a chance to win, you're all jacked up anyway. You got your adrenaline rushes going. You're trying to add that into how far the ball goes. You and your caddy are talking about the wind. What's it doing? What did the guy who just hit in front of me? What club did he hit? A lot of times you probably shouldn't even want to know what club the guy hit in front of you.
Yeah, because it's going to
influence. You want to go with what you think. Yeah, it's just a great hole.
When you look at Tiger last year, and you look at when you were working with Tiger in '97 when he won, what are the similarities of his game in '97 and today, and what are the differences in his game?
Well, he was so much more aggressive in '97. I mean, that's how he played. If you remember, he went out in 40, shot 40 on the front nine, four over par, and came back in 30, and then went on to win by 8 zillion shots and, broke the record. He was much more aggressive in those days. Golf course was so different. They've changed everything about it from '97 to last year.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about where he drove it on Sunday at 11.
15, big mounds on 15 are gone. The tees moved back on 2. I mean, he was hitting 9-irons and wedges and 8-irons into these par 5s in '97 because he was just freewheeling everything. Because he was young, and that's how he played. I thought last year, tactically, he played beautifully, the way he worked himself around the golf course. And it's a different Tiger Woods. His body's not the same. He can't do the things he could do when he was younger. Equipment's allowed him to still hit the ball pretty far. But I really like the way he chose the shots that he hit and how he played holes. And you could see his brain was working like Tiger was back in '99, 2000, '01, '02 when he just won everything he played. And you could see the wheels turning, watching him, listening to him, talking to his caddy, Joe LaCava, over the shots, talking about the wind, talking about where do we want to land this ball. It was fascinating being able to have microphones fairly close where you could kind of hear what they were saying. It's not like any other tournament. They don't allow guys with mics to walk out of the fairway at Augusta and put it there where you can see it. Believe me, that ain't happening. And so, but it was great doing the television there, just listening to the conversation and watching him, knowing him so well, knowing how he's had to change his approach to the game because of his body, because of all the surgeries. It was just really special to watch. And I think even if I'm a huge Tiger Woods fan and always have been, and I know you are too, because he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest player that's ever played golf. And the things he did, we've never seen anybody else do. And I said to friends of mine, I said, look, even if you're not a Tiger Woods fan, you had to love that. That was something really special.
Yeah, I thought last year, the comparisons between him and Jack, the way Jack used to think and the way, that was kind of a way. I mean, he didn't really have to hit it a lot of flags. He always played smart. I thought last year at Augusta was the closest Tiger got to the way Jack used to play in his prime, to where, like you said, he only shot 1 under. He didn't really press anything. He just kind of hit it to 25, 25, 30 feet a lot. And then when he had chances, he took advantage of them.
Well, it's an argument that can go on for history. Who's a better player, Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus? Look, Jack Nicklaus is the greatest major champion that ever lived. Yes, he's got 18 majors. Yeah, forget that. He's got 16 or 17 seconds.
I think he's 19 seconds.
Yeah, 15 to their thirds. I mean, his top threes are, I don't know, 40 or 50, some ridiculous numbers. The guy could have won 25 majors, because he played so well in majors. I think Tiger Woods is the greatest player that's ever played golf because I think he could do things that no one else could do. He was long, but he was a good driver. Anything he wasn't good at, he made himself good at. His wedge play was much better than Jack's. His play around the green was better than Jack's. Jack was a great driver, great player, great iron player. So you can't say which one was better. I'd have to say, if somebody asked me, you got to pick one, I said, how about a tie? How about Nicklaus and Woods are the two greatest players that ever played?
When you were playing the tour, Jack was still kind of in his prime.
Yeah.
And, you were around Tiger when he was, Tiger Mania in his prime. Were they similar to the rest of the field? Like when you played, did you look at Jack and kind of see him as this kind of mythical figure the way that I remember in 2000, at St. Andrews when we were on the range and Tiger was hitting balls next to Adam Scott, nobody was hitting balls and nobody wanted to hit balls near him. Was it like that when you were on tour and Jack was playing?
Well, Jack, think about Jack's era. He came along when Arnold was the king and he dethroned Arnold. But Jack had Trevino to deal with. He still had Arnold to deal with. He had Watson to deal with. He had great players that he had to really deal with. I'm not taking anything away to what Tiger did, and I'm not trying to diminish the other players. But, I mean, Trevino kind of had Nicklaus's number when he went
every time in a big tournament.
So, I mean, I think you're as good as the people that are around you that are playing. And I think Jack, when he was in his prime, the greatest players of all time were the ones that were playing then. They were the ones that were still playing well that he had to deal with. Tiger, yes, but Tiger, when he came along at such a young age, he demoralized everybody. I mean, he demoralized Ernie. He demoralized Phil. He demoralized Davis Love. I mean, he beat these guys like a drum. I can remember listening to the Ricky Fowler, the Justin Thomas, the Jordan Spieth, talk about, boy, we wish Tiger was in his prime. We'd really like to go up against him. I'm thinking to myself, watch out what you wish for. And then all of a sudden they got it. They got it at the Tour Championship, and they got it at the Masters last year. Don't be waking up that sleeping bear now, because watch out what you're wishing for.
That's, I think, been the coolest thing about, what Brooks did when he won the major at the PGA at Belle to go head-to-head with Tiger down the stretch, because nobody had really ever, in this era, really had ever done that.
Yeah, and I know, and Gary Woodland was right there playing with Tiger. He had a front seat to it, and we've talked about that. He said, man, it was really fun watching Tiger. He says his game wasn't anything like it used to be. He says, but boy, you could see he was into it. You could just watch his decision-making process. And, you get asked all the time, what's the difference between the great players in the world and the really good ones? And the difference is mental. It's how they handle their own nervous system. It's their decision-making process under the pressure of the toughest shots. It's the interaction. Do they have a caddy that really can step in and help them? And all the great players have had them. They've always had great caddies that stayed with them a long time. And that's the difference between the great ones. And Gary kept saying, he goes, God, it was fun just to watch Tiger, to watch the way he went about everything. Yes, he didn't win, but he knew he had a chance, and he was going for it.
We were flying home from St. Louis, and Tiger sent Brooks a message, and it said, hey, man, really, enjoyed doing battle with you out there. Hopefully, I tried to chase you down. Hopefully we can do it again soon. And so he showed me the message, and I showed it to Ricky Elliott, Brooks's caddy, and Ricky grabbed the phone and typed, thanks, Adam. And I said to Brooks, you got to send it. You got to send it. And he wouldn't send it, but he was so close to doing it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
What do you think of this new? Do you think the guys are going to be playing in June? Do you think that's realistic?
Boy, let's see, we're early in April. Obviously, we're not going to play in April. I don't think we're going to play in May. I don't know what the world's going to be like, Claude, to be honest with you. I mean, we're talking about golf and how much we miss being at the Masters this week. This would be the first, we'd be right in the middle of the first round, which would be phenomenal. But really, there's more important things in life than sports, and especially in golf. The whole world's got to get itself back on track. And once we find an antidote for this terrible, terrible virus that's going around, so we can hopefully stop it, then the economic things that we have to rebound from are going to be even worse than the medical things. It's terrible. This is devastating, not just those of us in our country. This is devastating everybody around the world. We're a very strong country, and we will come back from this, but it's going to hurt. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs and businesses, and they're going to lose members of their family, more importantly, when you think of the tens of thousands of people around the world that have died from this. Look, I'm old. I'm 76 years old. I was born in 43 during the Second World War. I don't remember any of that because I was too young, but I've never seen anything like this. This is very scary times. I mean, I've hardly been out of my house in a month. I've played golf a couple times. Our golf course is open, but very restricted on, everybody has to be in their own cart. The cups are raised so you don't put your hand in a cup. There's no rakes in the bunkers. But even then, you don't really like being around a lot of people. Like going to the range and there's a bunch of people there, you want to go to get away from them. I'll go out in the evening and play 4 or 5 holes, but I pretty much haven't been out of the house at all for a month. I mean, I've read a lot of books and watched a lot of movies. And
did you watch the replay of the '86 Masters yesterday?
I did not know, but
it was unbelievable.
I've seen it a million times, and it's fabulous.
It was really cool. I think Greg was paired with Nicky Price. I mean, watching Nicky Price hit golf balls in his prime. I mean, I was watching it yesterday. I mean, that guy's golf swing was so money. It was a joke how good Pricey hit it.
Probably one of the best iron players I've ever seen. Hogan and Trevino, I would say, were the only two would be close. Nick Price hit his iron shot so solid. Had that beautiful, quick motion in his swing. Reminded me a lot of Lanny Watkins, his tempo, and Hubert Green, some of the older timers that played. But, man, he could hit it. Man, people forget that Greg could have won the @86 Masters. He birdied 4 in a row before he hit that terrible second shot at 18. I mean, he could have won. Greg Norman, at one time, I think it was '86, and he led all 4 majors going to the last round and only won one.
Bob Tway chipped in at the
won the Open at Turnberry. Yeah. I mean, so there was a lot of great stuff going on. Seve was leading at the time, and 70 tried. Interesting to the pin on 15 because it wasn't down in the left corner where it traditionally is. It was more up in the right side, and Seve had a 4-iron to the green, if I remember right, and tried to hit a big old high cut, and he hit it a little heavy and double crossed it, and when it left the club, it was never clear in the water because if you saw it land, it was in the middle of the lake, and even he couldn't believe that he had done that. So there was all kinds of people that had chances.
Jay Haas with your brother Bill on the bag had a chance.
Oh yeah. Jay Haas had a lot of chances. I mean, the Masters is just special. I think if you go in time and you look at what we consider the greatest players of all time, maybe only Norman and Trevino would be the only 2 guys you would say are the greatest players of all time that never won the Masters. Yeah. All the others won it. They all won the Masters. All the ones you would put Hall of Fame's fabulous great players, they've all won the Masters. And Greg won it 3 times. He just didn't win it. He was right there to win it. Lee, I think, talked himself out of it.
Yeah, he didn't like the place.
I think he's admitted since he's gotten older, he wished he hadn't been that way because his game was suited for it. Yes, he was a fader, but he could draw the ball. I spent a lot of time with Lee Trevino. He and I practiced a lot together. I had him in Morocco once for a week when I lived there, and I played a lot of golf with Lee Trevino. He could really golf his ball, believe me, and he could tell you about it while he was hitting it. He didn't need any TV commentators to talk about when he was hitting it. He's going to let you know about it. I love Lee Trevino.
What was it like working with Greg Norman? I mean, I remember the times when you were around him. I mean, the guy was just so good, it was scary.
I loved working with Greg. I think I learned more about how to handle time like Greg when I worked with Greg, because Greg not only played golf, he had all these businesses. So if we had 3 hours to hit balls, it was 3 hours of 100% of hitting balls. No BS, no messing around. This is what we got to get our work done. I learned so much from Greg. I think, to me, Greg Norman is one of the greatest players that ever lived. He'll never get the credit, but I think he's won about 80 tournaments around the world in his whole career. He just did things that other people couldn't do. He was the greatest driver with a wooden driver I've ever seen. And that's really saying something as much as I watched Ben Hogan play. I never saw anybody drive the ball with a wooden driver like Greg Norman did. It got easier for everybody else when it went to metalwoods, but he still was as good a driver as I've ever seen. He was long. He was accurate. He was such an aggressive player, Claude, that it probably worked against him a lot of times, but it also worked for him a lot of times. And Arnold Palmer was the same way.
Yeah,
Arnold was a very, very aggressive player. I loved working for Greg Norman. It's probably, of the years that we were together, I probably enjoyed it as much as I did with all the other great champions I worked with, maybe a little more. And he's still a good friend. We still talk to each other and converse in Texas every now and then. And
Will you tell him to put a shirt on?
I'm not going to go down that road. The one thing I'm going to tell you, you're not going to see me at 76 without my shirt on. That's for sure.
Have you seen Ricky's new irons? Those tiny little blades he's playing
I
with. They
have
look
seen those,
almost
yes.
identical to the ones that Greg used to play with, which were so small you can't believe it.
Yeah, they look like the old school, especially the long irons, the 2 and 3 irons. They look like butter knives. They're so small. Yeah.
What do you like about where the game is today, and what don't you like about where the game is today?
What I like is I think we're in the best place we've ever been with the amount of great young players we have. The young players that are coming out of the Victor Hovlands, the Markow, the Matt Wolf, and you can go on and on. I teach a young kid, Maverick McNeely, who's going to be a heck of a player. You can go on and on about how great the game is. The downside, I think, and this is just me saying this, they make so much money without winning that I think the old timers and everybody that played, when my dad played, when I played, it was always about winning. Winning was everything. The money wasn't, first of all, there wasn't that much money back in the old days. I think when my rookie year in 69, I think either Casper or Palmer was leading money winner with about $120,000. We couldn't believe you could make that much. But I think now these younger players make so much money, Claude, without winning, that winning isn't that important. I've seen players down the stretch get in position, and then all of a sudden they didn't have a chance to win, and they got very conservative. They go, well, if I could just par in, I'll finish third, and I make 240,000 or something like that. Well, great players never think about that. They never think about the money, because the winning takes care of everything. The more you win, the more money you make. But I think because there's so much money in the game, what did we have last year in 2019? Almost 100 or something players made over $1 million a year. So guys are making a tremendous amount of money without being a winner. And so I think that's the downside to it. The plus side is I think the game's in the best place it's ever been talent level. It's why you don't see one guy stay number one very long. What Greg did and what Tiger did, those two guys that stayed number one longer than any two players that have ever lived, you won't see that again. It's almost by committee, number one. This guy's number one for 4 or 5 months, and here comes another guy, and here comes another guy. So I think to stay number one for a long period of time is going to be difficult. That just tells you the talent level that we have out there.
Do you think the ball goes too far and the equipment's gone too far?
Well, the longest hitters would be the longest hitters no matter what they do with equipment. I think what's happened is you've taken the best players in the world are still the best players in the world. But guys that were down around the 100, 125, they've gotten better without getting better because equipment has made them better. It's made the game easier. I wish the tour had its own rules. I really do. I really wish that the PGA Tour would have their own rules. We're the only professional sport in the world that we play under amateur rules. That's number one. We're the only professional sport in the world where you're allowed to bring your ball to the event.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Forget bowling. That's an excuse to drink beer. I don't even count that as sport. So I'm not going to go there on bowling. But golf's the only sport in the world where the guy gets to bring their own ball to play with. Now, if they ever tried to do something with the ball, I think it would be a huge lawsuit because the manufacturers have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in tooling and machinery and stuff to make these balls. If there was ever a tournament that could say,
Augusta,
okay, we're going to play with one ball this year. We've given your manufacturers the specs. It's going to be your company on it, but this is going to be the same because they play by their rules. They're totally into their rules. So they could do whatever they want. Would I like to see it? Yeah, I'd like to see everything dialed back a little because I think golf courses are becoming obsolete. Now, having said that, two things. If you wanted to keep equipment at the same, my dear friend Jose Maria Thabal had the best idea. He says, don't change the balls, don't change the drivers, just go from 14 clubs to 9 clubs. And all of a sudden we'll figure out who can play. So you only got 9 clubs. You can create whatever you want for your 9 clubs, and one of them's going to be a putter. So really you only got 8 clubs now that you can play with. I think that's a phenomenal thing. The other thing, Claude, I think that the agronomy has made courses too easy. I think if you were to narrow the fairways to 25, 30 yards wide, get the courses as fast as and hard as you could make them, and grow 3-inch rough and make the greens hard, you'd really see a difference in scoring. The argument would be, well, the problem is nobody ever hit a driver off the tee because they'd hit 2 irons and stuff. I said, well, I don't see any place in the rule book where it says you have to hit a driver. I think it says whatever the lowest score is it wins. And I would love, this is going to be the interesting thing, and I know we were going to talk about this later on. This is what's going to be interesting watching the Masters played in November, because depending on whether they decide to overseed the Bermuda grass, if they don't, and it gets fast and hard with that Bermuda grass, man, you're going to see a totally different Masters you've never seen before, because nobody's ever played it like that. It seems like all the time I've ever played there's been in the fall. So I've played there in September and October. Now, you can have a wet fall and things would be soft. But now think about this. We're now in April. This is the week the Masters should be played. So we've got May, June, July, August, September, October, November. We've got 6 or 7 months more for them to prepare. So if a place could ever get a golf course ready for a major, Augusta National can get it ready, even if they have to tell their members, okay, you're not playing for 2 months because we're going to just make the golf course the best it could be. So I think it's going to be interesting.
When you look at like the top 10 players in the world right now, we'll start at the top we'll go through them. What do you like about Rory's game? What do you think makes him such a great player?
I think Rory's always been a great player. I think he's matured. I think he's grown up. I think being married has helped for him, having something in his life that's different than golf. I think he's learned how to control his emotions better than he used to. He's always been a great driver. We've known that. He's always been kind of a streaky putter, but he seems to putt more consistently now. He's more of a well-rounded golfer. I think he's done a great job understanding his own game and turning weaknesses into strengths, and I think that's what makes him so good.
What do you like about Jon Rahm?
Jon Rahm, man, he's a different cat. This guy's something. I mean, he's
a top 10s it every week.
He is so consistent. He's got that little short club face shot at the top, a lot like DJ. Hits fades, rips it through the ball, beautiful motion through the ball. I mean, he's aggressive, but he's smart enough. He takes a lot of flack because he wears his emotions on his sleeve. He lets you know when he's not liking something and when he gets mad, and that's just him. But I'll tell you what Jon Rahm has done is he's convinced himself that he's one of the best players in the world.
For sure.
And you can see the confidence he plays with, and man, I really like his game. This guy can golf his ball.
Brooks?
Well, Brooks is a strange cat. Brooks, look at him in a major. The guy's a major killer. It's like no other tournaments does he even care about. Now, you and I know he cares about them, but there's something that happens to Brooks when it comes major week. I mean, he shows up ready to play. And I think a lot of it, Claude, and you have done such a phenomenal job with Brooks through the years, and you've been so close to him, is that he really hasn't gotten the credit he deserves for winning. What's he won? 4 majors now? Yeah. And he doesn't.
Four out of the last.
And every time he goes, he's never even picked as a favorite. But I think that works in his favor because he loves that. He goes, oh, you don't believe in me? Well, I believe in me. Let me show you how damn good I'm going to be because I'm going to kick all your butts this week and watch it. And you're going to see me do it. This guy plays with tremendous swagger. I can remember, I think it was in 12. When did Phil win the Open? In 13, 12?
13.
That's when I first saw him. I was out on the golf course.
He played a practice round with Peter Uihlein.
And I walked a few holes with you and Brooks and said, what do you think? I said, well, this guy, he's got a lot of speed and he hits it a mile. I said, he hits it quite a far bit offline when he hits it. But I said, if you can control this guy's speed and teach him how to hit 3/4 shots and stuff, I said, this guy's going to be a heck of a player. Well, yeah, no kidding. Look at him now. He's been number 1 in the world. He won at one point in time. Didn't he win 4 out of 6 majors or something?
Yeah, I think
like
he did.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's amazing. And the more they don't give him any credit, the more he likes it. And,
what do you like about Justin Thomas's game?
Let's go back to Brooks for a minute. And you know this, that when he's off, he's really off. He doesn't really play a lot of golf.
No, he doesn't.
He just doesn't hang out with the other guys that live down there. Just gets in his own little world. JT is something special. JT, his father's a PGA pro, has been his coach for his whole life. He was a good junior golfer, played Walker Cup golf, played good in college. I mean, this guy was a heck of a player coming out, but he was an all systems go player. I mean, everything was all out. He reminded me of Charles Howell III, that he didn't have a three-quarter shot.
Yeah,
Everything he hit was full swing. And I remember when he hired Jimmy Johnson to be his caddy, which I thought was a phenomenal move because Jimmy's, caddy for somebody, Nick Price forever. Jimmy was a good player himself, played
very
in
good.
South Africa. And I can remember we were at Whistling Straits for maybe PJ or something, and Ricky was playing a practice round with him. And I said, Jimmy, if you can teach this guy to hit three-quarter shots from under 150 yards, this kid's going to be something special. I said, because right now he just goes out at full speed and he spins the ball back too far. I said, but if you can work with him and get him to hit three-quarter shots, which I think Jimmy had a lot to do with that, getting in his head and say, look, this is what we got to work on. And JT, if you watch his swing in slow motion, you look at impact with a driver, both feet are almost off the ground. I mean, he's going at it, but he's pretty one-dimensional in the way he plays. He can move his ball both ways, but he likes to play one way because he feels he's more consistent that way. He's got a big heart. He's got a heart of a winner, and you can't teach that. It's like the strongest. My dad used to say the strongest animals in the jungle are the lions and tigers, and their hearts are as big as their bodies because you're going to have to kill them to beat them. And this is what I see in JT.
DJ?
Well, DJ, as you and I know, I think could be the best player in the world at all times because his talent level is amazing. He has no fear at all when he plays golf. I mean, and he has the ability that I think great players had, that Nicklaus had, that Tiger had, that Phil has. The last shot never happened. Because I'm not sure he's smart enough to even think about what happened to the last shot. And I think that's an asset for him. And I don't mean that as a degrading thing. I think that's one of the things that makes him such a great player is he doesn't worry about what happened. I mean, you and I know this. When he three-putted the last green at Chambers Bay to lose and not be in a playoff, anytime someone would ask him for like 2 years, how often do you think about it? And DJ goes, I don't think about it. He said, they're not going to let me go back and do it again. So why the heck would I think about it? That would ruin most players if that was them. So I love DJ's game. I love the fact that the amount of time I've worked with him to watch him mature from where he was to one-dimensional, big right to left player to move the ball around. It took a while, as you know, to convince him to fade it. But once he got to fading it, he was special. And he is special. He's another one that's kind of a streaky putter. Reminds me a lot of Trevino. Plays well all the time, or pretty much well all the time, tee to green. When he gets putting good, he just wins because you can't beat him. I wouldn't put him up there with the great putters, and I wouldn't put Lee in that category of the great putters. But when they got it going, they would just win.
I had a lot of people send in questions about junior golf. What were you like as a junior golfer?
Hothead. got mad, broke clubs, made a fool out of myself.
Did you practice more than you played, or did you play more than you practiced?
I've always been one that likes to practice. I like to hit balls, but no, you played a lot as a kid. You just played. You go round and round, sun up to sundown. We growing up in our family with all of us that played, and people are funny. They think that my dad being such a great instructor and such a great player that he pushed us to play golf, and that wasn't the case. If we wanted to play, he was happy to help you. I played all sports when I was a kid. I played a lot of other sports. The only time I played golf was in the summertime as a kid. But we played tournaments every week, and growing up at Winged Foot, my gosh, playing there all the time. If that doesn't make you a good player, you quit the game. I mean, if you weren't a very good player and you played every day at Winged Foot, you go to other courses. Golf seems kind of easy sometimes, but I couldn't get out of my own way. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I had the worst temperament of anyone that's ever played golf. I was such a perfectionist that I thought if every shot wasn't perfect, it was bad. I think it's what's made me very good as an instructor because I am such a perfectionist, but it killed me as a player. I mean, I couldn't get out of my own way. I talk about the strength of a DJ or a Tiger or a Phil or Jack, the last shot never happened. Heck, 9 holes later, I'm thinking of a bad shot that I hit somewhere. Well, you can't play golf like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a temper. I think you have to be able to get the negative stuff out of you, but there's a way to do it. And the way to do it is not to break clubs and cuss and scream and slam clubs. Tom Watson told me something years ago. We were talking about this. I think it was on one of our trips when we went to Iraq in 07. We were one night just sitting around talking. And he said, I'd get so mad at myself, but I didn't want the other players to know that I was mad. So I used to just pinch myself in my right thigh with my nail and my thumb, and I'd dig it in. At the end of the week, I'd be black and blue when I took my pants off on the side of my right leg. But I didn't want anybody to know that I was getting mad because I didn't want to show that it's a weakness. And I think a lot of players are like that. And the one thing I admire about John Rahm is he just goes ahead and gets mad. Because why? Because that's his temperament. And, he probably couldn't play any good if he wasn't like that. But I think you have to know how to control it. I've tried to tell my players, Natalie Gulbis and I had a great conversation one time about this. I said, look, you got a 10-yard rule where you can be as mad as you want to be if you hit a bad shot. But after 10 yards, you got to get it out of your system because your nervous system has to relax. You still have to go hit the next one. And she said one time, he goes, Butch, I was playing this tournament. It took me 5 minutes to walk 10 yards. I said, yeah, I wish I'd have used the 10-yard rule. I might have been a better player.
I think we get asked a lot of questions on how do you make that jump from junior golf to college golf to professional golf. What advice would you give someone to go from those stages? What do you feel like you have to do to get to be from a good junior to be playing in college, and then the decision to turn pro after college to then try and go and make a career in playing professional golf?
Well, the one thing is you have to be realistic. You have to realize that 0.5% are going to make it to the tour. So that's nobody really compared to the millions of people that play golf. The other thing you have to realize, and this has to happen more with the parents. We see what we call, and you see this, I see helicopter parents. They're on top of the kids so much they don't let them be themselves. And they tell them how good they are. Well, that doesn't do anybody any good. The golf scores you shoot will tell you how good you are.
Yeah, for sure.
You see kids that parents bring to you all the time, and they'll say, hey, my son's really good. And I would always use my dad's theory on it. I'd say, well, what do you shoot at your own course? Oh, he shoots right around par every time. So that's not any good at all. He's shooting par. He's not going to beat anybody. You kidding me? When he leaves his own course, that 72 turns into 77. So, and the guy said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, look, at your own course, you know how every putt breaks. You never have the wrong club. You know everything about the course. And so Dad's theory was, for good amateurs, if you weren't shooting 64, 5, and 6, maybe 67, every time you played at your own course, you got no chance because you're going to have to play courses all over the world and all different grasses and stuff. So you look at junior golf today. Now, with the AJGA, the competition is phenomenal. So these young kids get much more competitive types of tournaments than we ever did that we played in because there's so many more events around the whole country that they can play in. College golf is like AAA minor league baseball. I mean, college golf is, these kids are, well, we're seeing it. Well, just the three that I mentioned earlier, they came right out and won tournaments. So college golf is the minor leagues of golf, really, to be honest with you. It used to be the mini tours were like that. It's college golf is kind of like that. It's why you very seldom see a guy stay more than 2 years in college because he's so good and he plays so well, he wants to come out and play. The interesting thing about Tiger Woods, say, versus a Phil Mickelson. Phil Mickelson won a tour tournament when he was still a college athlete.
Phoenix Open, right?
Tucson Open. He was going to Arizona State. Tiger never played really great in major championships. He played well, and I can remember the Open Championship in 96? No, 95 at Lytham St. Anne's when Tiger shot like 66 or something in the third round, and I told his dad, Earl, I said, he's ready. I said, he showed me he can compete at the highest level.
And what made you think he was ready?
Just watching how he handled the situations, watching how he had come. As you know, I started with him when he was 16 or 17, and watching him go through, winning all the amateurs that he won, and just watching his progression of getting better and better and better. And he was like a sponge. He wanted to learn. He wanted to learn everything he could learn. And when in that Open Championship, I watched the way he played. I watched the way he handled himself under pressure. I think it was the third round where he shot like 65 or 6. And I told his dad, I said, he's ready. It's time. And, as it turned out, in 96, he turns pro. we're going to play, 7 or 8 events to try and win enough money so he didn't have to go to Q school. Well, heck, he won here in Vegas, and then he won in Florida at the Disney, and all of a sudden he's in the Tour Championship, and the rest is history. So,
are you surprised when you look back at Tiger's career that he's done what he's done?
I'm surprised he tried to change his swing so many times, but then again, that's his nature, because he always thinks he can do better, and he's never satisfied. Winning the U.S. Open by 15 shots at Pebble in 2000, and the next month going to St. Andrews and winning by 8, never hitting a ball in a bunker, he still felt he could do better. He thought he could do better. So, people say, well, I can't believe he left you and went to Hank Haney, then he left Haney and went so and so and so and so. I said, look, the guy, he just wanted always to get better. That was his MO. He was never any different. That's what made him so good.
How hard is it to work with good players? Or what do you feel like are the differences between working with the best players in the world and then working with everybody else?
Well, the best players in the world are special. They have innate ability to do anything you tell them to do, and they can do it in extreme pressure. You have to be very certain when you make a decision to tell someone they need to change something, because this is how they make a living. You're dealing with the way they make their living. So you better be 100% vested and correct in this change you want to make, which in turn, you then have to have a lot of belief in your own ability. People have always said to me, well, Butch Harmon is pretty arrogant. He believes he's so good at it. Well, if I don't believe in myself, how the heck can I take all these players and make them the great players that they are? I have to have self-belief in myself that what I'm telling them to do is proper, and they have to have that belief in me. I see a lot of young instructors, and you see these on the tour, that are afraid to jump in and make a change with someone because they're afraid they'll lose their job or something like that. But if a guy needs to make a change, if he's not doing what would make him better as a coach, you have to have guts enough to get in there and say it. The beauty of Tiger Woods is he wins the 97 Masters by a zillion shots and says to me at the end of the year, I think the club's a little shut at the top still. We need to change that. And I said, yeah, we can do that. We'll just do it a little at a time. He goes, no, I want to do it all right now. I want to start in 1998. I want to change this swing right now. And I said, well, Teague, I said, you're probably not going to win very much by going through. I don't care. He said, I'm going to come out on the other side and be even better. And if you remember in 98, I think he only won one time. Because he worked that whole year. And then look at 99, 2000, 01, 02, on and on. But this is, as a coach, you have to understand who you're dealing with, number one. You have to understand what his capabilities are. You have to understand his personality. People ask me all the time, says, well, how do you know when to kick someone in the rear and make someone laugh or give them a hug? I said, well, that's just part of your job. You got to know the individual you're dealing with. You got to know what his personality is. You got to know if you can get on him. You got to give him space. People say to me all the time at majors, and you and I get a kick out of this, they say, we don't understand how Butch Harmon gets all these guys to win majors. All he's doing is telling them jokes on the practice tee. He's got everybody laughing. Well, hell, we've done our work long before we ever got to a major. They're uptight. I'm just trying to get them relaxed. I'm just trying to get them to relax and play golf because they're so amped up and they want to go. That's why the Masters should be the easiest to prepare for, because you've got all those months from the PGA to the Masters, and it's always at the same place. But then again, the guys are so amped up to play in it, you got to get them to relax so they can go play. Even the great Tiger Woods, and you know this for a fact, maybe the worst drives he ever hits in tournaments.
Always off the first.
Always off the first tee. I mean, I can't tell you how many times he's almost over in the ninth fairway on the first hole at Augusta. People say, well, is he that nervous? I said, no, he's amped up. He's so ready to go. I said, he just put me in, coach. I just want to go. It's anxiety. I want to go. So, you got to know, give them a little something when they go to the first tee, something to calm them down to think about and go play. And that's just all part of our job. It's not always X's and O's, positions of the golf swing.
Do you think what similarities between good players and the average golfer? Because the question you and I get asked all the time, from parents and stuff, how different are the two games? What are the things that when the average golfer watches tour players, what should they be trying to take away from their games?
Well, first of all, the difference is light years away from a tour player to the best player in your country club. I think if you want to learn from the great players, watch how they handle situations. Watch their mental strength. Watch their decision making in great situations. Watch how they handle their demeanor. Tiger had the ability through breathing exercises to take his heart rate down to a resting heart rate, which I thought was phenomenal that he could do that. I've since been told that Nick Faldo could do that too. But I think the difference is so far removed from a really good club player. Like I say, a half of 1% get to the tour, and then maybe a quarter of that half become a great player. If that, maybe a tenth of that half become a great player. As I said earlier, the difference between the great ones and the good ones is more mental than physical. But I think as a young player, junior player, college player, you can find someone you admire on how they play. If they're of your build and stature, you can watch what they do. I mean, you know this for a fact in the years you worked for me when I was with Tiger. Everybody that would come to our academy in Vegas said, I want to swing like Tiger Woods. And I go, no kidding, so do I. But unless we get in his body, how the hell are we going to swing like Tiger Woods? How about we make you the best you can be? And that's what our job is with the average player, to try and make them the best. To go back to a question you asked me before about dealing with a regular player and a tour player. Well, with a regular player, you can experiment all you want. Well, that didn't work. Let's try this. That didn't work. Well, you don't have that availability with a tour player. This is how he makes a living, and they all have talent. They can pretty much do everything you want them to do, and that becomes, I think, the pressure of doing what we do. But I think the average player needs to get realistic in what their game really is and understand, can I be a good club player? Can I be a good mid-am player? We know a lot of guys that I'll give you one who's won all kinds of tournament who you knew. He grew up with me in Iowa, a young man by the name of Gene Elliott, who's now a great senior golfer. He tried the tour, wasn't for him, went back to the amateur ranks and has won everything as an amateur, and he's a heck of a player. And, you can still have a great life being that way. It's wonderful to think, oh, man, I'm going to be a tour player. But like I said, very few ever make it there.
Yeah. You want to keep going?
Sure. Heck
all right,
yeah.
We'll time this
what
out.
Else are we going to do? We're locked up in the house. What else are we going to do?
We'll keep going. I'll end this and then add you again.
Okay, you got it.
I've always admired.
Well, the two biggest influences in my life, Claude, are my father and the great John Jacobs. They are the two people that I learned the most from about teaching. I've always admired anybody that teaches. I've always tried to listen to their seminars, read their books, watch their videos. But my dad made it so simple, and John Jacobs was the same. It was more all about path, club face angle, and impact, and the ball. And you learned everything. The ball pretty much gave you an awareness of the path of the club and the club face angle at impact. What I mean by that is where the ball started, the trajectory of the ball, the spin on the ball, the shape of the ball, pretty much told you the path of the club and the club face angle at impact. And then you have to look at the position at the top of a guy's swing. Well, what created that position coming down? And it's why with great players, with tour players, my main goal with tour players has always been if I can get them in the proper position at the top of their swing. And that changes depending on their grip, strong, weak, club face, open, closed, shut. I'd much rather see a guy shut than open, because at shut you can hold it off and play golf. If the club face is too open, you got to use a lot of right hand to release the club and its timing. But I've always felt with a great player, if I can get them in for their swing, whatever their swing is, if I can get them in the right position at the top, the rest gets pretty easy because they're so talented anyway. And that allows them to do the things that need to be done. But if you're coming from the wrong position, starting down, you're in trouble because you're going to have to hold on or catch up or do something. One of the cool things, and you and I have talked about this forever, remember how Tiger Woods could be swinging so hard and stop?
Yeah, he could always kind of like
I thought he was going to break a rib one time jamming that right elbow into the side, and he could stop because why? He felt he was in a wrong position. A lot of times we feel we're in a bad position, but we just try and catch up with our hands or something. My father, who was not only one of the greatest instructors of the world, was as good a player that's ever lived. People say, well, if your dad was that good a player, why didn't he play the tour? Well, look, he had the two best jobs in the country. Winged Foot in the summer, Seminole in the winter. He was making more money than the leading money winner on the tour. And so he played in majors. That's what he played in. But his theory was, if I know where the club face is coming down, if I have to correct it, if I know the angle of the club face, it's too open or too shut, I can do something to correct it and maybe hit a halfway decent shot. Tiger always had that ability. He could feel when the club was behind him. He could feel the release in his hands that he had to catch up. And, you know, the average person can't feel that. I get people, you'll be giving a lesson to someone that hit a bad shot, and the guy, how many times have you heard this? Oh, I know what I did wrong on that one. Well, I said that once to my dad. My dad said to me, well, if you knew you did wrong, why the heck did you do it? You know, and I've said that to so many people when I'm giving a lesson. Really, you knew what you did wrong? Well, you're not very smart then because you're still doing it.
What do you think it takes to be a great instructor and a great coach?
I don't think it's a necessity that you had to have been a good player, but I think it helps. People say, well, you know, a lot of these coaches never played the tour or so before. I said, well, I'm not sure that's.
I never played the tour.
I'm not sure that's an advantage, but I think someone that has, I know for myself, because I've played in major championships before, I have an idea what my players are going through mentally as well as physically. So I think that has helped me. I think to be a great coach for me, we had a spell there where people were teaching systems all the time. And everybody do the same thing. I don't think that works because everybody's different. That we're kind of getting away from that now. I don't see as much as that. You know, you used to call a coach a one-trick pony because everybody do this, everybody do that. And I wasn't raised that way. I was raised that everybody's different, that every swing's different. The Hall of Fame has got some of the most bizarre-looking swings you've ever seen in it. But golf's a game of repetition. So if you can do it the same way every time, you can play golf. I think with technology, and everyone thinks I'm anti-technology. I'm not anti-technology at all. I just don't think it's the end all. I think you still have to have the ability to see the golf swing, to understand what's going on in the swing. And the more you teach, I think the better you get at it. The more lessons you give, the more swings you see, the better you get at it. And, you know, and that makes you better at what you do. And then I think finally you have to have a tremendous amount of confidence in your own ability to help people. You can't, I tell people when I do seminars all the time, you can't just say, I think you should do that. Well, if you say, I think, well, hell, you don't really know what they should be doing then. So never say, I think you should do this. I watch a lot of the young instructors now that they're so enamored with technology, especially with the launch monitors, that they not only don't watch the guy hardly make the swing, they don't even watch where the ball goes. They instantly just go to their computers and say, okay, you're 4 degrees from the inside, this or that. Well, why don't you tell the guy why he's doing that? Why don't you explain to him where his ball just started and the spin on it? That means the path of the club is coming this way. I was doing a seminar in Iowa a few months ago, about 150 golf pros, and I was asked that question. Do you use launch monitors? I said, yeah. I said, I do. I said, but sometimes I use 2 launch monitors. And they say, well, what 2 do you use? And I go, these 2 right here, my eyes. I said, these are my launch monitors. Now, it was pretty much an arrogant thing because I was just trying to be funny. But, you know, I've taught my whole life. So I see that if the ball's spinning too much, I can see the ball spinning too much. If there's something happening there, I can see that. I don't need that machine to tell me that this is happening. Now, it's nice to have the data, but data doesn't hit shots. And as you know, you can almost trick that launch monitor. You could get pretty good numbers and look up and it's a bad shot. And you go, well, how did that just happen? The guy goes, well, I don't know. I didn't watch your swing. Well, how about you watch the guy swing and see what's going on there? See if there's a movement from the top that's causing the club face to be in this position coming down or something. So I think the art of using your eye and using the ball has gone. Now, we grew up on that because we didn't have stuff. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have any of that stuff. So we had to grow up letting the ball. And I go back to if you were a decent player, you know yourself through practice on the range that you had to go to, if you were hitting fades or something, you go out and just try and hit hooks. You know, I got to get out of this weak shot to the right. I'm just going to try and hook it for 30 minutes and stuff. So that's old school way of doing it. But I think teaching's in a better place than it's been because they're guys that are really good at it. But I think what you have to do, Claude, is keep an open mind. Never, ever get complacent to think you know it all. I'm 76 years old. I've been a golf pro 56 years now, and I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying. That's why I went down to see Gigi, George Gankis. It was my whole idea with Golf Digest. They thought I was crazy. He said, "What do you mean you want to go see that?" I said, "Look, this guy's had great success. I mean, look at how good some of these guys play." They said, "Yeah, but he's a strange guy." I'm going to tell you one thing. George is a great guy. I really like the guy. He and I have become really good friends. Now, I don't agree with everything he says, and he doesn't agree with everything I say.
Are you going to start dressing like him?
No.
Flip-flops?
And the thing that irritated me the most when you look at the cover of a Golf Digest on an article we did when I went to see him, he had on nice slacks and a shirt, and I said to him before we did the interview.
Dressed up for you.
I said, what the heck's with that? How come you didn't come? Oh, no, he says, for you, I had to put on clothes. I said, no, I wanted to see you in your flip-flops and stuff.
Sellout move there.
I will tell you, the guy's very entertaining to listen to. He has a lot of passion for what he does. He believes strongly for what he does. He's self-marketed himself beautifully the way he's done that, and he's had a lot of success. And so that just shows you that there's a lot more than one way to do it. And I tell people when I do seminars all the time, the best advice I can give you is pick out an instructor that's had success that you disagree with his theories the most and go listen to his seminar. And they go, well, why would I want to do that? I said, because you're going to leave there learning something you didn't know. You may not agree with 90% of what the guy said, but 10% of it, a light went off in your head. You said, wow, that's pretty good. I need to understand why he said that. And that's what makes us good at what we do. Keep trying to learn. You know this because you heard your grandfather and my dad say this all the time. It's what you learn after you think you know it all. It's probably the most important things in life and in our business. So always keep an open mind. Always be open-minded about, somebody says, oh, that guy, he's terrible. Well, he must be doing something right. Some guys are playing pretty good doing it his way.
Do you teach the same way now that you did when, let's say, you started your career with working with Steve Elkington, as a really good player? And do you think that you're similar or different?
Oh, I'm completely different. What I teach today, I didn't teach 10 years ago. What I taught 10 years ago, I didn't teach 20 years ago. You evolve. You evolve with the equipment. And now I'm not giving any of the money back. I'm keeping all the cash for all those years. But I think I'm a lot better than I was 10 years ago. And I'm definitely a lot better than I was 20, 25 years ago. Why? Because you learn. The more you teach, the better you get at it. The better you get at it, the more you want to learn, the more you want to get better. I'm no different than a great player. I want to get better at my job. And instead of, players want to get better at their playing, I want to get better at what I do, too. What did you just say?
Charlie Hoffman just said who the last 3 holes belong to. I said, the Rebels. The Hawks. Okay, so I've always wanted to ask you this question. So if you look at all the players that you've worked with, so you've worked with Steve Elkington, Davis, Greg, Tiger, DJ, Ricky. If they all played a tournament in their prime and they all played their best, who wins?
No contest. Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods.
Who finishes second?
Greg Norman.
Who finishes last?
Me. I think that Tiger, when Tiger was on, 100% on, he couldn't be beaten. And I think they figured that out. And here was the thing, and Tiger and I used to talk about this, that he knew that they knew that he knew that they couldn't beat him. And that was a huge asset for him. I think DJ, when he's on, when DJ's 100% on, is as close to Tiger as I've seen in modern times now, since Tiger was around. Because when DJ's on, he can take over a golf course. Rory can do the same thing. They can literally just take over a golf course and manhandle a golf course. And a lot of other guys can't do that. Now, equipment's made some of them much longer than they were, but still, Tiger Woods in his prime, you couldn't beat him.
You've got to tell the Tiger Woods Phil story in the champions locker room at Augusta. You got to tell it.
This goes back maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever. And Tiger and Phil were going to play the last round together. And I think they were maybe 5 shots behind or something. But for those two, they could go shoot 63 or 4 and post it, and you don't know. And Phil had this thing where at major championships, if he was in the hunt on Sunday, he wanted to do 2 warm-ups because he wanted to go out and do some mechanical work on swings and shots that he would have to play during the tournament because he'd have an idea where the pins were going to be in the last round because he'd already seen the sheet. And so he wanted to practice those shots, and anything mechanically we had to do. Then we would go have lunch, and he'd come back out and do his normal 45-minute work. So he called me on Saturday night. He goes, "Hey, can you meet me on the range at 10:30 tomorrow? I want to do a warm-up, and we can work on some of these shots I have to hit to some of these pins out there." I said, "Sure." And he goes, "Then we'll go up the champions locker room and have lunch." I said, "Yeah, for me, it's always an honor to go in and look at my dad's locker and stuff."
Shares a locker with Tom Watson, right?
Tom Watson, that's exactly right. And so we do. We go out, it's 10:30, and it's hot. And he practices for an hour and a half or so. So, it's about 12 o'clock. And we said, "Well, come on, we'll go upstairs and we'll go in the locker room." So we go in the locker room, and, it's very small, only 3 tables. They've enlarged it now. Last year it was bigger, but there are only 3 tables. And we sat at the middle table, and the first table, there was someone's sandwiches and a drink on there, but he wasn't there at all. So Phil comes in, I sit down, and Phil's starting to take his pants off. And with that, Tiger Woods walks in and sits down at that table. That was his sandwich. He had the guy make it for him.
What's he taking his pants off for?
Phil's taking his pants off, and he's folding them nicely over the chair. And Tiger looks at him and says, "Dude, what are you doing?" He goes, "Hey, look, I don't wear that cheap Nike crap like you do. Tom Ford makes my pants. They're $1,500 a pair." And he says, "I want to be looking good when I kick your butt this afternoon." And Tiger goes, "I don't care who makes your pants. Cover up your stuff so I can eat my sandwich." And then I said to myself, I wish the press could have been here to see this. Now, as you and I well know, Tiger Woods has his pants tailor-made too. I mean, they're not necessarily, they have a swoosh on them, but I'm not sure they come from up in Portland. But it showed the camaraderie that these two have. At first when they were younger, it wasn't Phil, it was Tiger. And I'll tell you why. Tiger didn't really like Phil because when Tiger turned pro, I'll tell you where this came from originally. Now they get along fine. There's tremendous respect in the two. They're the 2 best American players in the last zillion years. Who knows? I mean, how good they are. When Tiger turned pro, someone asked Phil Mickelson, "Do you think that Tiger Woods is good enough to turn pro?" And Phil gave him an honest answer. He goes, "Look, when I was an amateur, I won a tour tournament, and I knew I was ready to turn pro. I don't think Tiger has ever won that, so maybe he should stay in school another year." Well, that irked Tiger like you can't believe. I mean, that just really irritated him. And that's where the foundation came of one not really liking the other. And it wasn't Phil. It was more Tiger in those days. Remember the Ryder Cup at Oakland Hills in Detroit when Sutton paired them together?
How Sutton?
I mean, they weren't even talking to each other. It was terrible. And I tried to talk Sutton out of it when he first asked me if he should do it. I said, "Well, why? Let me play devil's advocate. What if they get beat? I'll just put him out again." And I said, "Well, yeah, but if they get beat, you're sending a message. That's neither here nor there." Now they get along great. You should hear them needle each other at these team matches. Well, you've been in the team room at these team matches, Ryder Cups and President's Cup. They have fun needling each other, but there's a tremendous respect between the two for each other. And I think that's the part that I've enjoyed being part of both of their careers, to have been able to see it. I can remember back when I worked with Tiger, I was standing behind the 18th green on a Saturday at the Masters, and Phil had just birdied the 18th hole to be paired with Tiger on Sunday. And in front of me, I was standing with your mother, in front of me, Steve Lloyd, Phil's agent, his wife, and all his friends were there, and they're going, "Oh my God, this is so great. We get to play with Tiger tomorrow." And I'm thinking to myself, watch out what you ask for, because you're not going to like it. And as it turned out, Tiger just whooped everybody, as he always did.
You've worked with so many great players, but one of the things I think that's amazing about all the great players that you've worked with is they've all had unbelievable caddies that have carried the bag. What do you think it takes to be a great caddy? And when you look at the guys that Bones, Stevie Williams, Tony Navarro, the younger generation of guys like Joe Scarver and stuff, how important in the modern day, how has that kind of role evolved in your lifetime versus the way it used to be?
Oh, I think it's always been important. If you look at the great players, Jack had Angelo forever. Angelo was his caddy forever. You look at Lee Trevino, he had Herman Mitchell forever, was his caddy. Raymond Floyd, to me, one of the greatest competitors of all time, had golf ball caddying for him.
Golf ball.
That was his name. I don't even remember what his real name was, because the caddies in those days just had nicknames. But all the great players had these great caddies. Now you come forward to modern times and stuff, and it's very important. The difference,
Fanny with Nick Faldo. I mean, it was an amazing partnership.
The difference now, I think, is most of the caddies on the tour today are pretty good players.
Yeah.
A lot of them played college golf. A lot of them actually tried to play on the tour, or they played mini tours. So that's a different scenario. But having a caddy that understands you and understands his player, to me, Stevie Williams' greatest strength was his total confidence in his ability to be the best caddy in the world. And I can remember numerous times Tiger was about to pull the trigger on an iron shot in a major championship.
I think there was one at Medina one year.
Well, there was a
PGA.
There was a very good one at the PGA in Louisville. I remember the hole. I think it was the 13th hole, dogleg to the right. And Tiger was about ready to hit his second shot, and Stevie called him off. He said, "Stop. The wind just changed." And he put the club back in the bag. It went through the whole thing again, took out another one. He knocked it to about 6 feet and made the birdie. If he'd have hit the club that he was about to hit, it would have gone in the front bunker, and he might not have won the tournament. But this is what a great caddy can do. He understands his player. A caddy spends more time with a professional golfer than maybe his wife does.
Yeah, for sure.
Because half the time with your wife, you're sleeping. So, you're not awake. So a caddy has to understand his player, and the player has to understand the caddy. One of the things I always admired about Tiger Woods is he never made excuses. Because caddies are going to make mistakes. It was always, ultimately, he says, look, it's my decision. I want all the information. I want all the information my coach can give me. I want all the information my caddy can give me. Then ultimately, it's my decision to choose which road I want to go down. A lot of players like to blame the caddy when they hit a bad shot. Because, he said, no, that 7-iron's too much. You need to hit this 8, and then he mishits the 8, and it comes up short, and he gets mad at the caddy. I coined a phrase years ago on Sky when I can't remember the tournament we were doing, and a guy hit a bad shot. He looked at the caddy.
It was TPC in 17.
Said I knew I shouldn't have hit that, and I said, well, here's what you have to understand about tour players. It's never their fault. Okay, you have to understand that. If it's long or short, it's the caddy's fault. If it's left or right, it's the coach's fault, bad swing information. If he makes the wrong decision, it's the mental coach's fault, didn't have him ready to play. If he doesn't feel right, it's his trainer's fault because he didn't get him stretched out. If he shows up in a bad mood, it's the wife or girlfriend's fault, or in some cases, both.
Do you think, given everything that you just said, with all of, if you look at now the modern day tour pro is like a tennis player. They've got a team of people around them. Do you think you would be a better player today if you came on tour now, given the tools and the toolbox that you have, given the type of player you were, given all of the access to the stuff that's available now? Do you think you'd be a better player?
Talking about me?
Yeah.
I had the greatest access in the world. Claude Harmon was my father. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and you were breaking clubs. And
I was the dumb SOB that wouldn't listen to him. Yeah, I said I had the greatest access in the world of someone to help me. It just wasn't in my DNA in those days. I think, it's hard to say that sometimes the guys have too many coaches because they've been so successful. And you look at every other sport, they have personalized coaches. I mean, you deal with it. With Brooks, he's got you, he's got Pete, he's got a putting coach sometimes. I think that's just become the way it is these days. Everyone has a mental coach they work with that helps them. I think one of the problems some coaches have is they're afraid to tell their player to go get an opinion from someone else. Because I think it's good to hear stuff from someone else. It was for me with Gary Woodland, for example, a few years ago. I said, maybe you should. Let me call Pete Cowan and see if he'll help you with your short game. Because I said, I think you and I have reached a point where we're kind of just stagnant here. And I said, I think if you hear things a different way, it will help you. And so I did. I called Pete. And by the way, Pete, I know you're probably not listening to this, but I know he's fighting the virus
it's
now.
Been tough.
And I hope Pete's a great friend of your and I's. And we both love Pete. And get well soon, Pete. But I recommended him to go see him. I said, now most coaches wouldn't do that because they say, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. Well, I wasn't getting to him what I thought he should do and stuff. And I knew he could be better. So I just thought it was the right thing to do. And I don't see that done very often. My dad was the best in the world at that. He explained that to me when I was younger. He had a young Australian player. I'm going to have to go way back now. I think his name was Bob Shaw or something like that. Dad had done some work with him, and he had 4 top 10s in a row. I had a chance to win 3 of these 4, and all of a sudden he went to someone else. And I said, Dad, I can't believe this guy, with all the success he had when you were helping him, went to someone else. He goes, well, what do you mean you can't believe that? I said, well, why would he do that? He says, maybe he thought he learned as much as he could learn from me, and he wanted to hear it from someone else. It's why our job, we're never with someone forever.
Yeah.
When you get hired, you know, eventually you might probably going to get fired at some point in time. You know, people say, well, did you have that? I said, I took 4 guys to #1 in the world, and 3 of them have fired me. So, you know, it's not like it doesn't happen. And I'm best of friends with all of them, with all 4 of them. And I like them all. It's just, you know, sometimes somebody wants to hear something different. They just want to hear something said differently. And a lot of times when they go to someone else, it's not so much that it's different than what you or I were trying to tell them. It's just said differently, and a light goes on in their head, and they get it better. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
To me, I don't think anything wrong with that at all. I know, you know, I've helped Brooks before, and to try and help Brooks, I've walked around practice rounds with him. He'll say, what do you think? And I'll say, well, I think this or that. And then I'll say to you, hey, Brooks asked me this, and I said this or that or something. You know, that's just part of our business. It's just part of what we do. When I was still on the tour with DJ and Ricky and Jimmy, and you were out there more than I was, I used to say, hey, take a look at these guys. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you see. What's going on? Well, I don't see a lot of guys really wanting to do that. I think sometimes when a guy's really struggling, I think a coach should say, how about you and I fly out to see Joe Blow? Let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll go with you. And you know, if they bring it up and the guy says, yeah, let's do that. Doesn't mean they have to listen, but it doesn't hurt to hear it said differently.
We've got a lot of people asking for Seve stories. I know you spent some time with Seve. You got to tell them the one about when you were watching him hit balls and he told you he wanted to be a great ball striker again.
Well, there's a couple great. First of all, I love Seve Ballesteros. This guy was, you talk about charisma. He had it, man. He was.
Yeah, it was something. He had the sweater over the shoulders and the hair.
In '95, I think it was '95. I went over to Spain, and your mother came too, and we lived in his house for 2 or 3 weeks because he had gone to Mac O'Grady and he was so bogged down in mechanics and stuff, and they hired me to go see if I could get him out of that. If there was ever a field player that wasn't a position player, it was Seve. And so we're sitting there one night in his club room, and he has this club room in this old house in Padrena where he grew up. He built the house right next to the house his folks were in, right on the golf course. And he had this club room, and as you know, nowadays all manufacturers do it, but in the old days, if you won a tournament with a ping putter, they gave you a gold-plated putter. They gave you one, and they put one in their museum at Ping. Well, we're sitting in this room, and I swear to God, I thought I was in Fort Knox because there were so many of these gold answer putters, which he won so many tournaments with. And we're sitting there, it's like 2 a.m. And I look down on the floor, and there's like 5 empty wine bottles on the floor. We're just sauced completely. And finally, I said something to Seve, like, you know, Seve, I don't know why you get so upset about not driving the ball very good. You never were a very good driver. I said, you know, don't you tell me, Bush, I can't drive the ball. I drive the ball. I said, oh, look, you won the Open Championship at Lytham and St. Anne's from a car park. They had to move cars on the 16th hole so you could hit your second shot. Yeah, but I birdied the hole. I birdied the hole. Yeah, I know that, Seve. So the next day we go out, and he wouldn't practice on the range because it was terrible. We'd go on the course with a caddy, and he wasn't quite getting what I was trying to get him to do. Finally, I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to walk out here about 15, 20 yards in front of you. He's got a 5-iron. I said, now I'm going to tell you what shots to hit around me. He goes, Bush, I kill you. You stand there, I kill you. I know. No, I said, you're not going to kill me, Seve. I said, just when I tell you to hit a shot, just do it. So I stood there, and I said, hit some nice draws around me. Perfect shot. Hit a nice fade around one. Hit a high one over my head. Okay, let me see you hit one as close to me as you can come. And you know, these balls are all going perfect. And I went away and he started hitting shots. He's hitting it sideways, just everywhere. I said, see, here's the scenario, Seve. When you're in the junk, and believe me, you've spent a lot of time in the junk with a driver. No, you don't go there again any driver. Okay. I said, you never once think about what you're going to do. You see stuff. And I said to him this, I said, you and Jose Maria see stuff the average person doesn't see. This is before I worked with Mickelson because he's the same way. I said, you'll see an opening in the trees and you'll see a trajectory and a shape, and you'll just pull a club out that will give you that trajectory, and then you hit the shot. And it's perfect every time. Why? Because you don't think about what you're trying to do. I said, now I just proved that to you. Okay? When I was standing there, you never once thought about, no, if I think about it, I kill you. He said, I said, yeah, but that was my point. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you to start hitting shots, so we're going to start hitting shots. And it took a while, and he went on later that year and won the Spanish Open and so on and so forth. But Seve was phenomenal to work with. He had the most
How good
beautiful,
was the short game up close?
Oh, it was fabulous. He had such beautiful hand action. You asked if I watched the '86 Masters the other day. I didn't, but I did watch the Seve movie the other day for like the fourth or fifth times, and it was great. You know, just a little kid on the beach hitting shots in the sand and stuff, and he was an artist. He could paint it. He was painting a picture with golf clubs. He was just an artist. He had this ability, which all great champions have, to reach down inside of them and get the most out of them they can get. And I'm not sure they always know how they're going to do it. They just know they can do it. And his short game was phenomenal. There's an old tape that, my gosh, has to have been from maybe the late 80s. It was a DVD that he filmed on the short game in Dubai. And it's all about Seve doing the short game. You know, so it's a great thing to look at. It's a great tape to look at because he explains it all.
All right, so we're going to go through the entire game, and you have to pick one player. So who, if you had to pick best driver of the golf ball, one person to drive the golf ball, could be go old school and go modern day.
I'd say Greg Norman was the driver.
And of the modern day drivers today?
Tiger Woods in his prime.
Tiger in his prime. And then the current guys today? Rory's pretty good.
Rory and DJ would be the two I'd go with.
All right. Best old school iron player.
Long irons, nobody as good as Jack Nicklaus. He was the best. You could put Tiger and Nicklaus in just about every category, but Nicklaus long irons, he could hit a 2-iron and a 1-iron so high it would come down and stop on the freeway. I mean, it was unbelievable. Trevino, phenomenal iron player.
Nick Faldo was a hell of an iron player.
Yeah, well, Nick Price, phenomenal iron player.
And then of the modern day guys?
Modern day Tiger Woods. He had the ability in his prime to hit the ball pin high just about every time. That's when you know a guy that you're working with is really playing their best. When they control the trajectory and shape of their iron shots and they hit every iron shot pin high, you know they have total control of what they're doing, and Tiger was phenomenal at that.
Old school short game?
Seve, Olazabal, Norman.
Putting?
Tiger and Jack, the two best pressure putters of all time.
Bobby Locke was pretty good.
Yeah, he was phenomenal with a kind of inside over the top pull hook stroke, but made everything. Tiger and Jack made more pressure putts than anybody alive.
You spent a lot of time with Ben Hogan as a kid and growing up. Was he as good? Does the myth match what people think?
He was better than the myth. He was phenomenal. He was as good a ball striker as you'll ever see. He was so good and so smart mentally that he knew if he hit a bad shot where the ball was going to go. That's how good he was. He could plot his way around a golf course. Phenomenal. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You know, if you talk about old school players, and this is an interesting scenario. We may be the only sport in the world that if we brought the old timers forward, they would be better. Because can you imagine of Hogan and Nelson and Snead and Trevino and them playing with modern equipment? How much better they would be? Oh my gosh, they would be even better than they were. All the other sports, if the guys came forward, they're not fast enough, they're not big enough, they're not strong enough to play the game. But if we brought the great champions of yesteryear forward, can you imagine how good they would be with this equipment? My gosh, it would really be something.
What
I mean, they were phenomenal with wooden headed drivers and soft balls and an agronomy where the grass wasn't very good. The tees nowadays were as fast as some of the greens they putted on in their days. Look at the old school pictures and look how hard they hit these putts and stuff. That's why everybody was so wristy the way they putted. So
what made Ben such a good ball striker?
Well, you know, he before the accident hit a lot of hooks. He was a big hooker of the ball. After the accident, when he came back is when he learned how to fade the ball consistently. He and my father both drew the ball. That's all they hit were hooks. The great story about my father is that when he was on the tour, Craig Wood was the pro at Winged Foot, and he had won the Masters and the Open, U.S. Open and stuff. He was a great player.
Your brother's named after Craig Wood.
Yeah, he is, Craig Wood Harmon. And so there was a guy by the name of Fred Cochran who was a member of Winged Foot who was running the tour in those days, and he was Sam Snead and Ted Williams' manager at the same time. And so they were looking for an assistant pro at Winged Foot, and Fred Cochran said, well, this young guy, Claude Harmon, who's trying to play, I'll pair you with him tomorrow, and you can watch him play. Tell me what you think. And I've heard my dad tell the story, and Craig Wood was a member at Winged Foot. I grew up with him, so I've heard the story from both of them. They came to this hole. It was about a 4-iron shot, and the pin was in the front right-hand corner with a tree hanging out over the bunker. And the only way to get this flag was just to hit a high fade, just a normal little fade, left to right, 15 feet left of the hole. Got a birdie putt. Well, my dad couldn't hit a fade. So he's looking at this tree, and he goes, well, if I aim this ball way out to the right of this tree, maybe 30 yards to the right of this green, and hit a big old high hook, because the greens are sloped from back to front, the ball will hit in the back part of the green. It might come back down. He says he hit the most beautiful shot with his forehand. Big high draw, went around the tree, hit in the back of the green, came down to about 25 feet. He said he was really proud of the shot that he just hit, and he kind of walked down the fairway, and Craig Wood walked up to him and said, Claude, that's the worst golf shot I've ever seen in my life. And anybody with that much imagination, I think I can help make you a good player. So you're hired to be my assistant.
And your dad interlocked with the left thumb off.
Yeah, thumb off, like you'd hold a baseball bat, and then you interlock
so
this
baseball
bat this way,
and then
interlock that way. Yeah.
Did they really play all their practice rounds together? I mean, the stories.
Every practice round at a major, they played together. Before the Masters, Mr. Hogan would go to Seminole for 1 month, play every day with my dad and stuff. Yeah. When Dad was leading the Masters going to the last round in 48, a reporter asked Ben Hogan, are you surprised this club pro's leading the Masters? He goes, I'm not surprised at all. He's been beating the heck out of me at Seminole for the last 30 days. He said, this guy can play.
You grew up at Seminole. Tell the story about, because you guys used to live where the maintenance barn is. And
if you go to Seminole today, where you pull in where the guard gate is, right to the left is a house, and that's the maintenance barn. Well, the green superintendent and the pro lived in these two houses that were adjoining, and that's where we lived. And I was, 6, 7 years old. Let's see, Dad was there in the 50s. Yeah, I'd have been about 7 maybe. I had one club, 7 or 8 years. I had one club, a 7-wood, and I'd hang out in the trees to the right of the 6th green, the famous 6th hole at Seminole with the big long bunkers that go back 100 yards short of the hole, and the members would come through there and they'd send their caddies, go get little Bush to run out here, and I'd bring my 7-wood, and they'd give me a ball, and if I hit it on the green, they'd give me a pack of lifesavers. So I just hang out there. I just hang out there with my 7-wood, run out there, hit the shot, and take my lifesavers, run back, wait for the next group, and that's all I had was a 7-wood. I had one club. That's all I had. And so at the end of the day, Alvin was the caddy master, and I can remember calling down the caddy master. I'd say, Alvin, is everybody through the 6th hole? He'd go, yeah, you can go play. So I'd go play 4, 5, and 6, 4, 5, and 6. One club. All I had was a 7-wood, and I just play. And just hit, I'm out there by myself just playing. I'm 7, 8 years old.
Do you remember the first, what's the first set of golf clubs that you can remember?
I can't, to be honest with you. I can't remember the first set of clubs I had. I know as we got older, got into our 12, 13, 14, we would get Dad's hand-me-downs. My God, these things weighed a ton, and the shafts were like telephone poles. And you wonder why we all grew up hitting fades. You couldn't hook a ball with these clubs if you tried, and that's what we started playing with, the hand-me-down clubs of my dad and stuff. And You know, that's just kind of how you were. When you grow up in a golfing family, I mean, you were a rarity because you didn't really play golf as a
No.
young kid.
But you
You
used to
didn't.
make me, I can remember, you used to make me re re-whip and re-laminate old wood drivers.
Oh yeah.
I can
Well,
remember
you had to
one
know how to
summer.
put the whipping
Yeah,
on them
so
and stuff.
you gave me an old driver that had it looked like the laminated pieces of wood on top of each
Yeah.
other, and
Yeah.
I had to sandpaper it down and then
Yeah.
take the insert out
Refinish it and
and then
stuff.
refinish it, and then I had to
Yeah.
put it in the it
And
was
then
like
whip.
a and then
You had to
re-whip it.
put the whipping on it. Yeah, that was the old wooden clubs we used to use. I think the people always say, "Do you have any good stories about Claude when he was younger and he played?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I can tell you how. I can't tell you how many times, but it happened numerous times that I'd get a new set of clubs and." Claude would ever say, "Hey, Dad, can I hit your driver?" "Sure, go ahead and hit it." And
Sure, idiot mark off the top
you'd pop one up and put an idiot mark on it. Oh my gosh, I got to refit
every
this club.
every single time. That's because I couldn't play golf because I was terrible.
But yet the beauty of you is you can play either way, lefty or righty. I can't even chip out. And now I see all the boys during this lockdown are having left-handed golfing events and stuff. And
Brooks actually, I mean, everybody thinks those numbers were bogus. One of the things that his trainers have always said about him is because when they do exercise, he does them right-handed and left-handed. And Brooks said, I used to play baseball so much and I used to switch hit. So he said, hitting golf balls left-handed, I've got a lot of speed. How many other sports did you play growing up?
well, I played football was my best sport. Football and basketball.
Were you
I
any
know you
good?
think, yeah, I was pretty good. Yeah, I was probably not. The older I get, the better I was. That's for damn sure.
Didn't you
I know.
actually? You
I know
actually
at five
tried
foot
out.
eight. And, I know at 5'8" you wouldn't think that I was a decent basketball player, but I had a good shot and I could play basketball. I
You
played a
tried
little
out for the New York
baseball.
Giants, right?
No, no. Wellington Mara, the owner of the Giants, was a member of Wingfoot, and I was a good. I played football at New Rochelle High School. I was an all-county halfback, and I was pretty good. I was fast and crazy enough to like to hit people. And the guy said, "Wow, this is a great sport. It's legal to hit people. It's right up my alley." I said, and so thank you, honey. And my lovely wife just bought me a glass of water. Thank you. I
There you
guess
go.
that means I get it dry, babe. And so I was giving him Mr. Mara a lesson once, and he goes, "Hey, we're short a punt returner with the Giants. You want to come to training camp and try out?" I said, "No, I don't want to go to training camp and try out." But my dream in life as a kid was to be a football player. I loved
Really?
football. It was my favorite sport. I loved playing it. I loved everything about it. I've always liked being part of a team, so I always liked team sports. I think it's why I like being in the Army so much. I think if I hadn't had the misfortune of having to go to Vietnam, I might have stayed in the Army because I like being part of a team and part of a unit and stuff.
We've talked a lot about your dad, but your brothers have played a huge role in your life. Tell me something about each of your brothers. Tell me something about your uncle, your brother Craig.
Well, Craig is the second one. I'm the oldest. Craigie is 3 years younger than I am, and he was named Craig Wood Harmon after Craig Wood. And something that was really cool when Craig Wood won the Masters. They didn't have the green jacket ceremony in those days, and you didn't win the trophy you win today. You won a sterling silver cigarette case with the signature of everybody that played in it that year. And when Craig Wood died, in his will, he left that to my brother.
Oh, wow.
And Craig had that, and it was really cool because it was beautiful, and it was all engraved and everything with his name, and then all the signatures of all the other players were in this sterling silver cigarette case. And then when they got the World Golf Hall of Fame, and Craig Wood obviously was in it, my brother Craig donated that to the Hall of
Wow.
Fame in Craig Wood's honor, which was pretty special considering that Craig Wood had left it to him in his will. But that was pretty neat. That was something that was pretty special. Craigie, was the golf pro at Oak Hill Country Club in Rochester, New York for 42 years. And I can remember, I've never met a better club pro in my life than my brother Craig. And I'm not saying that because he's my brother. He had the ability to handle members. They got 1,500 members here at Oak Hill. First of all, it's Rochester, New York. He was there 42 years. I couldn't live 42 days in Rochester, New York. I'm sorry, Rochester, but it doesn't fit my personality. And he had the ability to handle every member so good. And he was like water off a duck's back. Nothing ever bothered him. He was the greatest club pro. He was a good player. He was a good teacher, a good merchandiser. And I used to kid him all the time. And I have a lot of my friends that are members at Oak Hill, and it's a great club. It truly is. And I said, how the heck did you ever spend that many years in Rochester, New York? He goes, well, I did have about 8 majors, while I was the pro there. And back in the day, he used to get the tents and everything where the club
'89 Open.
And we all worked in those tents.
And he was the last club pro to own the merchandise for a major.
And so he made a ton of money doing that. Craigie is to this day, he's retired. He lives down in Jupiter, but still goes down to a place called Seagate and goes over to MacArthur. Still teaches.
I saw him the other day. He drove past me with his wife in the car. I waved at him. He blanked me. So that's pretty normal for Craig.
And then Dick, who was...
What do you miss most about Dickie?
Dickie saved my life. I mean, when I was down and out, he's the one that saved my life. When I lost my job, I was divorced, I was drinking too much, I was gambling too much. I was really in bad shape. And he said, get in your car, drive down to Houston. You can live with Nancy and I. I'm going to find you a job, and we're going to get you out of this. And I did, and he did. He went to Dave Marr and Jay Revere and got me a job working in their golf course construction business for about 3 years, which I really liked doing because I never understood how to build golf courses. But Dick was the glue in our family. He was the one of the 4 of us that kept everybody together. When he passed away, I think it's been about 14 years now, maybe 15. And when he passed away, it was terrible. I can remember saying at his funeral that I think the good Lord took the wrong one. He could have taken any of the 3 of us that are still here. And because Dick was the strength of our family. He was the glue that kept us all together. And the funny part about his funeral, and you know the story.
Oh, it's the best story about your brother Billy.
My brother Billy, we're sitting up on this altar in this Catholic church, and this church probably hold, 800 or 900 people. There must have been 2,000 people there. They were all outside because Dickie was loved in Houston, and I was an emotional wreck. I mean, because he literally saved my life. And I said to Billy, I can't talk first. You go first. I'll have to try and compose myself somehow. And so Billy starts talking, and he didn't tell Craig or I anything he was going to say because none of us talked about what we were going to say. And everybody in this church is sad. They're all crying. And Dick was such a person that was so loved. He was the greatest of junior golfers and just he was just a wonderful human being. And he gets up there and he goes, I know exactly what Dad said to Dick when Dick walked into heaven.
I was in tears when he was saying it.
He kind of turned around, looked at me, and he turned back. He says, Dad said to Dick, hey, Dick, how did Butch screw up that Tucker with it? And I mean, the whole church went cracked up.
Crazy.
And then all of a sudden, it was for what it should have been, the celebration of Dickie's life. And Billy changed that whole thing around. And he turned around and looked at me and said, gotcha.
Billy was always my favorite uncle growing up.
Well, Billy's funny. Billy, what you don't know about Billy, he's the youngest. Billy, I have tremendous respect for. I think he's 27 years now.
27.
Sober, 27 years off of alcohol and drugs, and he was in pretty bad shape. He now lectures at Betty Ford and does a lot. His foundation does a lot for people that have alcohol and drug abuse. I mean, he's done tremendous work in what he's done. But he could really play.
You said he was the best player.
When he was a teenager, when he was 16, he won the club championship at Wingfoot. And Wingfoot must have had 125 guys single-digit handicaps. I mean, they could all play. He won everything in the state of New York, state juniors, state everything. Just won every event you could play. He and Craig went to where at was he there when Craig was there? Yeah, maybe at San Jose State. And all of a sudden he lost it, couldn't play at all. And, he was just the most natural player. Aimed down the right side, hit a pretty little draw, could chip and putt. And his game just went away. But Billy's a character. He's got a fantastic sense of humor. He's a heck of a teacher. He's unbelievable. One thing about all 3 of my younger brothers are every bit as good a teacher as I am. I mean, they always say that we don't know how Butch gets to be number 1. He was number 4 in our family. There was Dad, and then there was the 3 of us, and then maybe him. So possibly he was the 5th best in the family. But he was great.
You've told me
You know,
many times. You've told
you
me many
have,
times I'm the worst teacher in the family too. So,
well, probably when you look at the comparison. As you know how Harmons are. If you feel good about yourself, don't hang out with us because
yeah.
we don't take any prisoners. We kill everybody. We kill ourselves included. You know, in life, Claude, and you know this, there are certain times in your life that things happen to you that change who you are. And Dickie was the first one for me that really made that happen. And then 20 years ago, when Christy and I got together and I got remarried, this woman is really has been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Taught me more about life, more about love, more about being a good person than anyone I've ever been around. So in our life, we all have these times where these things happen. And for me, Dick was the one when I was really down and out that saved me. He was an amazing man. And you knew all my brothers.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they're all characters. We're all
For
different.
sure.
We're all
Last
different.
question, and I'll let you go. What do you now that you're kind of retired? What do you miss most about the tour and being around the players and stuff?
I can't say I miss much. I don't miss the travel. You know, I left the tour at the end of 2018. I still teach a bunch of the guys, still see them
Sure.
all. They still come out and take lessons. I still teach all the time. I just don't travel. I miss the heat of a Sunday and a major championship because I had so many guys win major championships, and so many times very seldom was I at one when one of my guys didn't have a chance to win, and I miss the rush of that. I miss the heat of the battle. I miss the tension, the tension that the player has, the tension I have as the coach. I miss the being right there inside on the range with the guys before they go to the first tee. I miss that. I don't miss the stress of it. I don't miss the travel for sure. After 35 years of doing it, and you and I have had this conversation, it just wore me out. It was
Yeah.
time. It was time for me to step back and let you younger guys take over.
Well, it's been great talking to you. Everybody stay safe out there, and thanks for sharing